Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. You know where you are, you know why you're here, and we're going to have fun today. I can't wait to climb into some of the current events because we've kind of taken a break from that in recent episodes. I've been preaching to you a little bit, you know, getting you guys, trying to get you soul saved, getting ready for Armageddon and the end of the World War III, all the stuff that's coming your way. I can't wait. I'm just trying to make sure that even if we do die in nuclear holocaust, you won't spend eternity burning in hell. So it's been fun. It's been a great conversation, and I'm glad you guys have been here for it. Hopefully you are sharing these episodes with your family and your friends and going to where podcasts are offered, leaving us a 5-star rating because that's what we deserve, and a review where you can say whatever you want to say, and you do. And I appreciate that. Been a lot of good ones here lately, so thank you. It's all about vanity, folks, and stuff like that helps drive us up the charts. The world of podcasting where you get to talk for a living. It's fun stuff. Speaking of people who talk for a living, my guest today is somebody that I've admired and respected for a long time, and he's earned it, and I think you're going to have a good time getting to know him. You probably already do, because you've already listened to him. He is the host of the Ben Ferguson Show and also the co-host along with Senator Ted Cruz on The Verdict. Ben Ferguson, what's up?
Dude, it's nice to be here. I love that we're like neighbors and I didn't even know it. We're neighbors.
You didn't even know I moved down here. I came in here covertly.
I like that. That's like, it's still Team 6 style, right? You just show up, bam, I'm here.
Did you see Harry Sisson, who made the comment after the Supreme Court came out with that decision the other day? He made his tweet saying now Joe Biden could send SEAL Team 6 in to just kill Trump or everybody.
Let's make a prediction right now. Of all the crazies on the internet that said that, no one will get arrested.
None.
No, the Secret Service will not investigate anyone saying you should assassinate Donald Trump. But by golly, we're going after grandmother from January 6th. It was a mile down the law.
Yeah, they had her selfie
down the
stick.
lawn, 1 mile away. We're going to go get her. Yeah, welcome to America.
I've always said anybody that was taking a piss on a tree a quarter mile from the Capitol got interrogated.
So, and you know, if you were there swiping your credit card, I still can't believe people weren't more outraged. Like, Bank of America gave over all the credit card transactions without a warrant. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, just you were in the area having dinner. You're there to take your daughter to dinner. Like, who works on Capitol Hill, have nothing to do with January 6th. Like, yeah, let's check those transactions.
Yeah, you know, my girlfriend CJ, she sang the anthem that morning before everything, and she called me and she goes,
so she's the one that started it.
She started the whole deal.
Is she in jail? How is it going?
She's still worried. She's still worried. But she called me that morning, or she sent me a text message because I was in the studio at the Blaze, and she texted me. She said, I have a weird feeling about today. We'd already been 2 weeks before at the Stop the Steal rally. Yeah. And she said, I was supposed to go that day, and I was like, I'm not going. I'm not going. And I'm glad I didn't, because I'm an idiot and I'd have probably been whatever. But she texted me.
You would have been hanging out with a hornhead guy. You probably would have been. You'd be like, I'll take a picture with Nancy Pelosi's desk. Why not? It'll be great entertainment one day on the show.
I did have people who texted me from there, and they were like, hey, guess what's happening? I was like, get the F away.
Yeah,
like,
run.
Go away from that. But she left, and she got an earlier flight, came home early that day. And so I'm glad she did, but she still worries about the fact that she was just there that
They can
day.
always just knock on that door. You know, they know where you are. They know where you. I may not know where you live, but they know where you live.
Let's break down some lies. Since you alluded to the January 6th thing, let's break down some lies. So this administration, look, politicians tell lies.
Yes.
Or they interpret the truth the way that it fits their...
Or they just tell lies.
Yeah,
let's just call it what it is.
They do. That's what politicians do. We've always known that politicians lie. I don't know when we set them up on this pedestal and expected them to be our savior, but somewhere in America we did that along our little cultural decline. But here's the thing. So go back to the Russian collusion thing. We spent 2 years in the Trump administration. They were trying to prove that. They knew it was false, so there was nothing to prove. Then the COVID craziness that went on. And then, you know, Biden, who's running for office, and they try to debunk the laptop deal. He says, I got 51, government agents who are saying this is all Russian trash. It's a plant. Some Russian...
They knew they were lying.
They knew they were lying.
And Anthony Blinken's the one that did that, by the way, put all that together. And what was his reward for lying to the American people? He's now Secretary of State.
Secretary of State.
That's a good ROI, by the way.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad. And so now they've been lying. I hate the term gaslighting, but they have been telling us that all of Biden's stumbles, fails, falls, and stutters are cheap fakes and deep fakes.
Yes.
And now we know, after watching the debate, the whole world was exposed to that. What was your take? Because the media went nuts. People went nuts. What's your theory on why they did the debate that early, what were they trying to accomplish with exposing him like that, who was behind it?
Yeah.
Or was it just one big mistake?
It was a big mistake. So let's go back to the State of the Union. And when everybody kind of got the phrase jacked up Joe, I think it's pretty clear they juiced him. He was on some sort of medication or something. He came out, he wasn't blinking. He was just talking really fast. He forgot to even let the Speaker of the House introduce him, okay, which he was prepped for. Right. Remember, like Speaker Johnson never introduced him that night. Yeah. First time in my lifetime that you haven't had the Speaker of the House introduce the President of the United States of America to the joint session, right, to the chamber, because he was so jacked up, let's go. And about halfway through, you started to see that fall off, right, where he started to get back to normal Joe, right, sleepy Joe. And I think they were like, hey, it worked. Like, we were not having this conversation in January. It's not been that long since January. I think he's probably close to the same guy. And I think this time they said, all right, let's get one out of the way early. We're behind in swing states. Let's kind of divide the country. We're very tribal now. We're 46% Republican, 46% Democrat. I actually think it's probably closer to 48 if we're being intellectually honest. So you're fighting over about 4% of Americans. And I think they thought if we have it early on, we'll kind of get that mojo going and we'll turn it into a war, not the issues. Because he couldn't win on the issues. He couldn't win on the economy, couldn't win on inflation. He couldn't win on the world stage, right? I mean, look at the chaos in the world right now. He wanted to get away from the Biden crime family. He needed early to really get people locked in because of his son. And they weren't going to be able to lock up Donald Trump. Have an early debate. Let's get everybody in their dugouts, and then let's go to war. I don't think anyone thought it was going to be as bad of a disaster as it was Thursday night, including his staff. He didn't have a cold. The idea he had a cold is crap. I think everybody knows that. But I think what you saw was a guy that they didn't get jacked up. And he was a guy that, and there's a good chance he was overprepared. I actually believe that. I think 6 days of preparing a senile man who clearly has dementia or COVID, in my opinion, is an individual that you need to keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, let's not put too many thoughts in his head. Like, today our job is to get up and we're going to go for a walk, granddad, and we're going to go eat lunch, and full stop, that's how you treat him. And they treated him like an actual candidate. They treat him like the president. Now, the White House, under their own admission, says his schedule is he's best when. Noon to 4. They've said it out loud.
Over and over.
He sleeps in. He's a president for maybe 4 hours a day. And I think once he got up on stage and he realized that Donald Trump was going to let him talk, and this was the advice I gave to people around the Trump team. This is the advice that many senators gave to Trump when they had that big meeting. You may remember about a week before Donald Trump went to Capitol Hill and had that closed-door meeting with senators.
Yep.
And all of them said the same thing to him from people I know that were in the room. Let him talk. Don't interrupt him. Let him stumble. Give him enough rope, right, to hang himself politically. Don't fight him like you did 4 years ago.
It's interesting you say that, because I've said since then, I was like, watching that, I go, Trump could have been a lot harder on him. Like, he could have decimated him verbally if he wanted to, but he laid back.
He laid back. And the perfect example was when he went on the fritz and his brain went on the fritz and you saw it, and he made the sentence and he ended it with Medicare. And you look at Donald Trump and he said it, and it's not how Donald Trump normally talks. He says, I don't know what he was saying at the end of that sentence, and I don't think he knows either. Normally, if you're a politician, you would double down and triple down on that and make that the moment of the debate. Yeah. Well, he made it the moment of the debate by saying it, shutting up, and Joe Biden didn't respond and looked lost on camera.
Yeah.
And that was 10 times worse than if he would have started to hammer him. I think that was the best debate of Donald Trump's life.
Agreed.
I really do.
Agreed.
And I think he understood this guy's making it worse. Now, 3 minutes in, by the way, I was yelling at the TV. I don't know what you were. But I was like, this is too bad. They're going to replace him. Oh my gosh, please. Like, I was rooting for Joe Biden to get better. I said this on Fox. I was wanting him to have a better debate because I didn't want him to be replaced. Yeah. And I realized about 3 minutes in, they got to get rid of this guy. And that's the conversation we're having now.
Hey, guys, let's take a quick break in the show, and let's talk about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. You know, for 10 years, they have been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And when I say the only one, trust me, they are the only one. Another thing about them is they've been a partner of this show for a long time, and they're very good personal friends. I love these guys. I know their values, and they're just good people. And I'm happy that they partner with this show. I'm so proud of them. Patriot Mobile has offered dependable nationwide coverage for a long time, but they give you the ability to access all 3 major networks now, so you do not have to worry about ever getting out from under a coverage area. You've grown accustomed to having it, so you might as well keep it. But here's the deal. With Patriot Mobile, you don't have to fund the left or their causes, because with the big three, if you pay your bill with them, guess what? They're going to fund things that you don't believe in. It's a fact. It's true. Check it out. Do your research. So when you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support with your hard-earned dollars. You support free speech, the Second Amendment, religious freedom, the sanctity of life. You're going to honor military veterans and our first responder heroes. They got a 100% U.S.-based customer service team that's going to make switching easy. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or you can upgrade. They'll help you. Switching is easy, and their team will even help you find the best plan that fits you and your family's needs. You can go to patriotmobile.com. That's patriotmobile.com. Don't forget to add /Chad on the end of it. Or you can call them on the phone, 972-PATRIOT. You get free activation with promo code CHAD. I spell it, Chad. Join me. Make the switch today. patriotmobile.com/Chad. That's patriotmobile.com/Chad, or call them, 972-PATRIOT. I had a couple of thoughts about that before. I said, well, one, they could be trying to set him up so that he exposes himself to the people who are watching, because it has to be their decision, so they don't feel like, and then now we've got time to replace him. And then the other takeaway was, I was like, Trump was at a catch-22, because he could have said, the best way to do it would be say no to the debate that early and then let it get so far that they can't replace him. But if he'd have said no, then everybody would have been like, you're a puss.
Yeah,
you're
they would have
scared
said
of Joe
he's cognitive
Biden.
decline.
Yeah.
He's stumbling. And look, even the White House said that yesterday. White House Press Secretary Jean-Pierre was like, well, I hope you're asking all these tough questions of the other guy. Like, does he have dementia? Has he had a brain scan? I mean, Nancy Pelosi threw him under the bus, for goodness sake. She said, well, was this an episode or is this a medical condition? That's Nancy Pelosi saying that now. Because they realize they got to get rid of the guy. Now, my prediction, and I've been told over the last day or two, that all the Democratic money has said, we're not giving him another dime, because, and this makes sense, and this is where it gets the minutia, but I think people in your audience are going to want to know this. If Joe Biden drops out, and let's say Gavin Newsom comes in, or Michelle Obama, all of his money does not immediately go to them. The only person that can have the money he's raised instantly is Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris basically right now is I think the de facto nominee, because she's the only one that can say I get all the money. So all of the Democrat donors are saying, we're not giving him a dime until we figure out, if he does drop out, what happens to my money. If I write him $1 million check, if I have a fundraiser for him and raise him $15 million or $20 million, or I'm a bundler, right?
Yeah.
And then he drops out 3 weeks from now, do I have to go back and write the same damn check again to another candidate? So I think it's Kamala Harris. I also think there's a racial side of this too. Can you replace Kamala Harris with a white guy?
That's the problem. And that's also the chess piece that Kamala's playing at this point.
Of course she is. Do you want to lose all the black voters? Gavin Newsom's as white as they come. Like, you're a white guy, I'm a white guy. Gavin Newsom's like a superior white guy. Like I'm a redneck white guy.
Slick back.
Yeah, like he is as white, cracker white as it comes. Like he is the one of the white. Like if you said, do you have a white friend, and Gavin Newsom's in your phone, if you're not white, you'd be like, oh yeah, I got a white friend. Like he's your token white friend.
Yeah.
And so I think they know that that's not going to be the answer. I also think, and I made this prediction, Senator Cruz did. We did this 9 months ago back in September on our podcast. He said, I think they'll parachute Michelle Obama in at the convention. Now, everybody thought we were crazy.
Yeah.
We said in September, have never switched. I still think Michelle Obama is the one that could walk in, because she's the only woman that could replace Kamala Harris.
Woman in quotations. we won't go that
That's
low
gonna be the whole
right
clip
now,
here.
but yeah.
No, but I mean, if the only woman that could come in and replace Kamala and not lose all the African-American voters, which you've already lost 20%, right? Because Donald Trump's polling the best we've ever seen with African-American voters of any Republican candidate in history running for president. He's got about 20% of the African-American vote right now. That's unbelievable. That's like massive in swing states. So do you want it to go to 25 or 30? If you replace the African-American woman who's about to make history in Kamala Harris with a white guy, I think the African-American vote for Trump goes to 30%. Can you win if he's getting 30% of the black vote? The answer is no.
In today's economic climate, many of us find ourselves facing the challenge of managing our monthly expenses, and high credit card interest rates can trap you in a cycle of debt with balances that persist month after month. Paying only the minimum each month means it could take you years to become debt-free, if ever. And what I want you to do is reach out to American Financing. They're a trusted partner in helping people achieve financial freedom. So if you're a homeowner, they can tap into your home's equity and help you eliminate high-interest credit card debt. On average, their customers are saving about $854 a month, which is the equivalent to receiving a $10,000 annual raise. You could all use that along with me. Now, the process is straightforward and it's quick. You could close your loan in as little as 10 days, and by acting today, you might not have to pay your next mortgage payment. So it costs nothing to see how much you can save. This opportunity to regain control of your finances is too significant to ignore, so call them. 888-675-4090. That's 888-675-4090, or visit AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182-334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. And to be clear, you've got in Kamala Harris, not an African-American woman. You've got an Indian Haitian. I don't know what she
identifies as African-American, so it's fine, right?
You saw the little clip that she did with whoever that person was, where she's talking on FaceTime with the deal, and she's like, "Oh, girl, I'm out here in these streets and these extremists." I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
You're calling everybody that's on the other side of the aisle extremists at this point, but it was so cringe, that whole video. But again, she's trying to identify as black, just like when she's dancing around with Kirk Franklin on the stage in front of the White House for Juneteenth.
Yes.
And she's grooving around and doing her thing. She's playing this whole deal, and she knows that's her chess piece. So yeah, I obviously, and people I don't know that people understand the amount of money we're talking about when you talk about donors that go. Like you and I.
Millions deep.
I got people in my phone. I could text them right now. They'll text me back, and I know for a fact they've given $500,000 personally to campaigns.
Yes.
Right? That's not chump change.
No.
And now those guys are going to go, hey, where's my money?
Sure. And what's he going to do with it?
Yeah, what's going to happen? So it's going to be an interesting thing. Like, are you of the mind that if Michelle jumps in, she would be virtually unbeatable?
I think it would be extremely hard to beat her, and here's why. 2 reasons. One, she would come in as a savior and everyone would love her and the media would just shower her with love at the convention. Number 2, it also looks like she's not an opportunist, right? I didn't ever want this. I'm doing this for the good of the country. I know that Donald Trump is such a threat to democracy that I had to step in and fill this void. And I'm not here because I want to be president. I'm here to save America. I could write her speech. And that's the speech she would give at the convention. Number 2, you don't really have to campaign against Donald Trump. Like, you don't have to get your hands dirty. You're just going to go out there, shake hands, everybody's going to love you. Oprah's going to be with you.
Go be a celebrity.
Right? You're a celebrity running for office with no record, right? There's no record of Michelle Obama. Mm-hmm. And she is loved by the media. She'll do every show, and her ratings, her favorabilities will go through the roof. I don't know who could beat her. Now, Donald Trump would desperately need to debate her on stage. If I was her, and this is August, I wouldn't do a debate with Donald Trump. There's no reason to, because then you become a politician. And what we've learned is when people are voting for someone for an X factor reason, right? Whether it is, you remember when John Ashcroft, former Attorney General, had to run against a dead guy in Missouri and lost? And lost to a dead guy because what happened? They said, well, if you vote for him, because there wasn't even time to take him off the ballot, we will appoint his widow. How do you run against that? Can you run campaign ads against a widow whose husband just died in a plane crash? No, you can't. And thank the Lord. By the way, if you want to know why I believe in God, John Ashcroft would have never become the Attorney General, which was so important after 9/11, if he wouldn't have lost that race to a dead guy. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that God's in control. I mean that sincerely. My point is, I think God allowed that to happen. Yeah. He couldn't run a campaign. But I don't know if you can run a campaign against Michelle Obama. How would you run that campaign? What would it look like? And Donald Trump would then look like the evil white guy running against an African-American woman. Yeah,
and you're right. She has no record. There's also no pictures of her pregnant, but that's another story. That's a whole other deal.
You were sitting waiting for that moment to say that. I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I like that.
But you made a valid point that I had not thought about, and that is she has no record.
No record. How do you run against someone that has no record and is just there to say, I'm just here because America needs me?
Well, so, my theory all along has been that Barack Obama, Michelle, will throw her in there as well. The Obamas never wanted to be politicians as much as they wanted to be celebrities.
Of course.
So I think they made that deal with the devil at the crossroads, all the big Hollywood people, and they said, look, we're going to make you this king, but you're ours forever.
Yes.
And you'll live on Martha's Vineyard. You'll get on yachts with George Clooney, and this will be your life.
And by the way, you'll still run the White House by also having a place in D.C.
Yeah.
I still think people don't, like, the question everybody should have been asking themselves after the debate the other night, it was the first thing I said afterwards when we were doing our show. I said to Senator Cruz, I said, can we just take a moment here and ask the question that everyone should be asking, which is, clearly that guy, Joe Biden's not running the country. So who is running the country? I think it is a shadow government. I think it's all Obama's people that made up his entire administration, and they don't want to lose that power. So there's another reason why I think Michelle would be picked, because everyone in and around the Biden administration who's clearly running this White House, whether they're full-time staff at the White House, the EOB, or outside people that put their people there, which they did. They filled all the slots. It was Obama's people that filled every single position in the Biden White House. And who do you think is calling them, telling them what to do? And I think if you went to Michelle Obama and said, look, you got to do this, I still think there's a very good chance she would take it.
Well, I don't think she would have a choice. I think whether she wants to run for president or not, I think when the powers that be say, you're doing it.
You're doing it. Well, her husband would be one of those people.
Yeah.
And he would say, look, I got this. We're going to run it. You're just going to have...
You're just going to be there.
And their daughters are older. Remember, she didn't like her time in the White House. If you go back and look at the story, she actually kind of hated it towards the end. I think it was because her daughters were there. And it's really hard when your daughters live there and just that scrutiny and that bubble. They're in their 20s now. Like, I think one daughter's 25 and one's 22.
Yeah.
So they're not living at the White House. It's totally different.
So, all right, let's take a deep breath here. Let's take a deep breath because I want to come back to some more heavy stuff in a minute. Let's talk about you for a minute. You started in politics young.
12. Started in radio when I was 12.
No kidding.
12 years old. Started in radio when I was 12, and I started doing TV on some random guy's show named Bill O'Reilly when I was 17.
How was that?
It was hilarious. He asked me if my friends thought I was a dork.
Yeah.
Because I was doing TV, and I was like, no, they actually think it's pretty cool I'm on TV. Like, it was just one of those moments, and we had a vigorous debate, and then the rest is history, as they say.
How did that happen? Like, how did that come along?
So I started in radio when I was 12. I'll give you that as quick as I can. My mom was listening to talk radio. Back then, this is like 91, I think, if my memory's correct. There was not conservative talk stations. It was talk stations that would have like a local Democratic leader, city council member, board of aldermen, mayor that had a show. And then there was this guy named Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
But the stations there was not enough programming just to be a conservative talk station then. So there was a liberal city councilwoman in Memphis, Tennessee, where I grew up, named Janice Fully Love. I named her Janice Full of Drugs later in life. If you want to have a fun time, Google her and you'll understand why. And so she had a show. And they were looking, it was 1990, I think it was 1993. And you remember Richard Gephardt?
Yeah.
He was the head of the Democratic Party.
I hadn't thought of that name in a long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
He had a press conference. He held up a bottle of ketchup and he said, is this what Republicans consider a vegetable now? There was a big fight in Congress over the school lunch program and expanding it. And he said that the evil Republicans were trying to cut school lunch funding. And this is going to be a vegetable. And it was a very impressive moment politically. And I was in the back seat. My mom didn't know I was listening. I was like, Mom, there's no way anyone would do that to kids. My mom's a school teacher. What did she do? She's like, well, Benjamin, you should probably call our congressman, get a copy of the bill, read it, and see if you're right, because this was a teachable moment. Well, I was dumb enough to do it.
Yeah.
So they remember the old fax paper, the roll paper?
Yeah.
So I gave my dad's fax number. He comes home he's like, what is this? It's like 100 pieces of rolled up paper on the floor. Had to put them in order.
Here's a bill.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He's like, what is this? And so I literally read the whole bill. I found out the Republicans wanted to increase school lunch funding that year by 3.7%. The Democrats wanted to do it by 4.2%, and they were calling the difference in the increase a cut. And I called her show the next day. I asked my mom permission, my dad, and they said yes. I called in. I was like, ma'am, I just want you to know that you lied to your audience yesterday. I didn't understand Republican, Democrat. This was just right and wrong.
You called her right out.
And she started yelling at me. Well, don't yell at a kid that calls into a radio show. It's a bad look. That's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I said to her, did you read the bill? And she said, this is way before Nancy Pelosi said it, no one reads the bill. And I said, well, again, maybe if you consider yourself to be a public official, you should actually read the bills before you lie to your audience, because I did, and I'm 12, and you're how old? She was like 53. It turned into this screaming match, and I told her the difference. I said, I think you should apologize to your audience for lying to them. I didn't say misleading. I didn't mince words. It was lying.
Yeah.
A show later that afternoon was a conservative show, heard that call and replayed it on their show.
Wow.
And said, if anyone knows who this Ben kid is, please have him call us. My parents' home phone exploded. I called in. They had me on the air. And they're like, have you ever seen a radio studio? And I was like, no, ma'am, no, sir. You know, I'm 12.
You're right.
And they're like, put your parents on the phone. This is all on the radio. So I put my mom on the phone. They're like, bring him down here tomorrow. We'll have him on as a guest for 10 minutes and show you the radio studio. I ended up being on for an hour and a half.
Wow.
Phone lines were jammed. And I fell in love with the radio. They were like, this is weird. Can you come back tomorrow? I was like, I don't know. You got to ask my parents. So we walk out to the parking lot after the show. And they're like, can Ben come back tomorrow? And they're like, sure. They brought me again, hired me a week later, and the rest is history.
That's unreal.
I mean, and I loved radio because you couldn't judge me based on what I look like. I'm a kid, right? So I mean, when they say you had the looks for radio, literally when I was 12, you better believe it. But I could then argue and people listen to my arguments, not my age.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. And then I just wanted to basically expose people that lied. That's how I started.
Yeah.
And Bill O'Reilly had seen me on something and they said, call this kid. And the pitch was Fox News had just started. And the pitch, when you got pitched to go on Bill O'Reilly's show, which is still amazing to this day, was they call and they said, there was a guy named Griff Jenkins who's on Fox now. He happened to be from Memphis. And so he went to MUS, so we knew some of the same people. I didn't know that when he called, but he introduced himself. He was like, I'm from Memphis. I want you to come on the show. But the pitch was, I'd like you to come on this show called The O'Reilly Factor. It's the former host of Inside Edition. That was the actual pitch because no one knew what Fox was yet. It wasn't even on in cable in Memphis. So they sent me a VHS tape of my appearance, which I'm sure my parents still have somewhere because we couldn't even watch it. And so he liked me, and then I started doing Fox and MSNBC and C-SPAN and CNN, and then it just kind of went from there.
And you were how old at that point?
17. When I started doing TV, yeah.
So you went to Ole Miss. Did you go with the intention of doing broadcast journalism, or what was your plan?
Yeah, so I went to play tennis.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a kid again. I mean, I was homeschooled to be able to do radio, so I started doing radio at 12 and didn't stop until I went to college.
Yeah.
And so then I started filling in for Oliver North, G. Gordon Liddy, and Michael Reagan. At a network called Radio America. And so I filled in and they called and they're like, hey, you were really good. Would you want to do a syndicated show on the weekend? So at 19, I got syndicated. So
that's insane. And let me explain. Actually, you do it. Explain to people what that means, because that's a big deal.
So
when you get syndicated.
Yeah, so I didn't have a local show.
Yeah.
And so they didn't know I was 19 at the time. And they didn't know I was in college when they called and said, would you be interested in doing a show? But syndication basically means we're going to go to radio stations all over the country and we're going to basically present your show as they should take it national on Sunday nights. Mm-hmm. So they called me and I was like, well, I'm at college, so I'd have to drive to a studio every weekend in Memphis. Are you guys good with that? And he was like, stop messing with me. The guy who called, he didn't realize I was 19 years old. I think he thought I was a full adult.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm really not joking. And I'm really 19. And so they did the deal. And so we started on 17 stations and we've grown it. I've been doing it ever since on Sunday nights.
Incredible.
And it was just, it was the American dream / God's will. And so I would drive up from Oxford every weekend and go to the station on Sunday nights from 6 to 9 Central Time, 7 to 10 Eastern, and I've never changed that time slot ever since.
So, without going too deep in the minutia, because you and I, we've got a lot of the same avenues and wires crossed and things like that, as far as our paths are concerned, with your connection with a lot of the people, the Blaze, CRTV, all those different things, which, we both have had our journey there, and it's so funny. This concept that you get to talk for a living is funny to me. A lot of people say, well, you've never had a real job. It's like, no, I did. That's why I learned to talk for a living.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like the real job stuff.
Yeah.
I like this. I can do it in air conditioning. And so you got to a point where you're doing the radio show, it's syndicated, and then this idea of podcasting comes along. And I've always been a radio guy. I like radio. I still love radio. And this podcasting thing for me, when it came along, I was like, who the hell would want to listen to that?
Yeah.
But people do, and it's a phenomenon, right? And I've had so many people on who were there at the beginning of the podcasting thing. And now you're doing this podcast with Senator Ted Cruz, The Verdict, and that thing's blown up huge.
It has. It's been really fun.
How did that start, and how did that come to fruition?
So it's funny. I was doing my own podcast for iHeart and Premiere, and they had done a deal to get my syndicated show. So Premiere does basically, everybody will remember them for Limbaugh, Hannity, Beck. Now it's Clay and Buck since Limbaugh passed away.
Yeah.
And they wanted to syndicate my weekend show, and they wanted me to do a podcast. And I fought podcasts for far too long. I remember specifically having a conversation with Ben Shapiro, who's a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He was like, dude, you should do this podcast thing. And I'm like, why would I put myself out of business? I was on radio.
Right.
I looked as a threat to radio. And it is, but it won, and radio is still radio. But it didn't replace it, but it certainly took a lot of audience because it's on demand. You can do it whenever you want to. You can listen when you want to. And so I fought it for too long. I regret that. I was wrong. He was right. And that's why his show's number one, because he was one of the first ones to do it. And And so when I started doing it, I knew Senator Cruz, and I knew people around him. He was doing it once a week with Michael Knowles, who's an awesome guy. And they were at Daily Wire, and they wanted to kind of expand it.
I forgot about that. I remember when Michael was doing that with
Michael.
Yeah.
And so I got a phone call about, hey, he's thinking about expanding. iHeart's looking at it, yada, yada, yada. And so I thought I was getting asked about advice, like on the show, what I would, like more of that. And then it turned into, y'all are in the same city, because we're in the same city.
Yeah.
Y'all could do it in person, like for the video pod that we do that's on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, it was weird because I love Michael. Like, I didn't want to. I was like, hey,
Michael's a great guy.
I don't want to like. I think ethically, you got to like. I'm one of those like, hey, if it's something that I don't want to hurt somebody else in this business, I want everybody to succeed that does well. And it was just one of those where they were like, look, this makes sense. We want to expand it. We're going to move it from there. It would move over to iHeart. You're at iHeart, and it worked out. And now, I mean, Senator Cruz has genuinely become one of my best friends. We spend a ton of time together. I mean, 3 days a week, we're doing a show together. And so that's been really fun. But the show has really just grown significantly from doing it 3 days a week.
It was funny. You and I we're both close friends with Sarah Gonzalez, and my audience is no stranger to Sarah. Certainly, I guess it was year before last. I was at the playoff game, the Astros game, and the senator was a couple of rows down in front of me. And so he came up, said hello, and I texted Sarah. I said, "Yeah, Cruz is here," and she said, "So is Ben." And I was like, "Where at?" She said, "He's texting me. He's down." And so. From up there, I was waving down.
We waved at each other, yeah. And I didn't know you lived here. That's the best part. I had no idea. I thought you were in Dallas.
I was.
Yeah. I was in Dallas for a long time.
I was, and then I moved down here. And I've been down here for 2 years. Haven't looked back. It's been great. And I like this area. And I like particularly this.
You like freedom?
I like red counties. I like places where there's,
people that think you're not crazy.
Well,
yeah.
This is the Woodlands. I call it the uppity eco bubble, where everybody's sort of their thing. I belong to a country club over here that is limited in its membership, but they have two rules: no assholes and no Democrats.
Yes,
and they pretty much uphold that. And I told the owner, who we
both
friend,
know.
I said, "You don't have any Democrats, but there's a couple of assholes."
Yeah, well, that's golf. That's golf. Yeah, that is golf.
But I'm like, it's a whole new world. We've got there's a bar right down the road called the Angry Elephant, which is all built around Republican themed stuff. I mean, this is another world living down here, and I like being surrounded by conservatives. But again, that's being encroached upon at the same time. No place is perfect, but yeah, I'm here. And so I was talking the other day to Sarah Gonzalez, and it just hit me like a brick in the head. I go, Ben lives in Houston, and she said, yeah, and I said, I gotta reach out, and so here you are. And you know what's funny is you and I've been texting the last couple of days, and as soon as I opened up Facebook after the last text exchange you and I had. We weren't friends on Facebook, but it was suggesting you as a friend. How weird is that?
Dude, it's like when you talk and all of a sudden you're like, like your phone's always listening. And then all of a sudden you'll say some, great example. The other day we were talking, someone lost a ring, like an engagement ring.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is why you have insurance. Every ad for the last 3 days on all platforms is insurance for jewelry. I'm like, it was one thing I said. I'm like, the phone's always listening.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. So now we're friends on Facebook, which is
that's official.
It's full circle at that point.
That's official.
And you know what? All right. So side note, I just had to bring this up because you're gonna laugh. You do. We talked about this before. You do what I'm going to do when I retire.
Yeah, do comedy.
I want to do comedy when I retire. That's my. I've said it. You can ask my wife.
But you've done a little bit of it.
I did under another name when I lived in D.C.
It's amazing.
And it was like they'd have open mic night, and I did it until I was told by people that I work for, you can't do it anymore because someone's going to figure out it's you, and then you're going to say something that will come back and hurt you. I'm like, I would do it now, like. Knowing what I know, right? Like how to not get in trouble. But like, I love making people laugh. I mean, that's just like, we've talked about this. I had a gun range barbecue restaurant. I just sold it in January. And like, people are like, why did you do that? I'm like, well, it pisses off liberals. And everyone's happy eating barbecue that's good. So I went on both fronts.
I was talking to Sarah about that. I said, he just sold his barbecue restaurant / gun range in Memphis. Because I texted you, I said, you know what? And he was talking about doing it in Houston. I was like, well, same difference.
There you go.
I said, everybody in both of those areas are eating barbecue and shooting each other, so that you might as well get paid.
You might as well get paid. It was the most fun thing I've ever done in my life, like business-wise.
Yeah.
Because you had people that you saved their lives. They would use their guns after they got their permit to carry, and they would come back like, It's like when your house catches on fire and then you go take food to the firemen afterwards. Like you really appreciate them and you say thank you. Or EMTs. Like we had people that would bring us cupcakes and cookies after they used their gun to save their life. And that's why I started the gun range was I was a victim of a shooting. I was a target of a gang initiation in Memphis, and it's called having blood in the gang. And basically a older gang member initiates a younger gang member so that they'll never narc on the gang if the feds ever get him for something, offer him a deal to wear wire, etc. Because they'll be like, well, guess what? We know where he killed somebody. So it's like, it's actually a brilliant business. Like if you look at the business model, I'm not saying it's ethical, but it's actually pretty brilliant. It's a way to protect and know that that guy's never going to turn on you if he gets in a jam. And so they target me. Luckily, I had a gun. Shot back.
Target you because of your profile as far as...
I was told by the police that I had been too hard on gangs in Memphis on the radio. And I was relentless. And I actually used the gang members' names.
Gotcha.
Like I was like, hey, you're the head of the gang. I'm going to talk. I didn't talk about the Crips and the Bloods. I talked about, Johnny of
Earl.
the... Yeah. I mean, I was like, if we're going to name names, let's name them. And so they were like, well, this is easy guy. We should just off him. And so I ended up fighting, shooting back. They ended up getting caught later, going to jail. And then they threatened to kill us while we were in court as we left court for probation hearing in the elevator. And we're like, we know where you live. We have your address. If you testify against him, we're going to kill you. And I did what any good American dude does. I body slammed him and lost my mind, which was really kind of fun.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you can do that stuff.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
God, I got a pulled muscle just thinking about it.
I mean, it was, when you're younger and you don't have kids, you're way more this. Like, there's a lot of things that I would do when I didn't have kids that now I'm like, I got kids. Like, is it worth it? I don't know.
I have people from time to time who'll say, I'm coming to one of your shows and we're going to have it out. And I'm like, look, I'm too old to fight you. I just have to kill you at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not throwing punches. I'm throwing lead.
I can't. I can't.
My favorite is when you've gotten them, I'm sure, on social, like the death threats. Like, there's some that I'll get and I'm like, I always write back, promise.
Yeah.
Like
eat some
promise. Like I want to know when and where. Let's go. If we're gonna do this, tell me where.
What I love is the guys who say, "I want you to get sanctioned to box, and you can get licensed in one of 4 states, and we'll get in the ring together." And I'm like, or no,
or no, yeah. Like you're how old now?
I'm 51,
but you can still throw down if you have to. If you have to, but you don't want to.
I don't want to. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm gonna break your knee while we're having the conversation. I'm just gonna kick you. And then we'll go from there. Have
you had the fan moment? I call it, it's like one of my favorites, like where they get in your face.
Oh, yeah.
So I was in the airport, this was not long ago, with people that remain nameless. And this dude walks up and he's like ready to go. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I know he doesn't have a gun because we've already gone through TSA. Like, this is when you know you're smart. Like, I'm really smart. I'm assessing the situation. I just got in his face and grinned. I was like, I will go right now. I feel good about this. I was like, this is going to be the highlight of your life. I won't remember it in 30 seconds, but if you want to do this. And I think he was so shocked that I was like ready to go. And I'm like, and really in my mind, I'm like, he doesn't have a gun. He didn't have a knife. He didn't have anything. He just went through TSA. I like my chances. Yeah. And then he was like, F you, man. I was like, Jesus loves you. I don't have to. Yeah. Like, but those are like, if there's any place I wanted to fight, it was inside security at TSA.
In there. I've measured the odds. I like them.
Yeah, I like my chances here.
I like them. No, I get it. People are weird. And most of the people who are making the threats, they don't talk about it. They just come do it, which is, it's a scary world we're living in. But
this is why you pack heat.
You got to.
Everywhere. Are you everywhere? I'm everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I don't go anywhere without it.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't.
Yeah, and so I tell people all the time, I was like, listen, I let people say, oh, you need to watch this guy. You need to up your security. I said, I promise you my security's upped. Yeah. Like, it's there.
We're good.
We're good to go because contrary to what most people think, I still believe in the Constitution, in my ability and my right to protect myself. And you want to throw me in prison for that? If you want to give me what's the guy's Daniel Penny, the guy in New York that choked out the guy on the subway?
Yeah, I'm good. Like, yeah, I take my chances, and I like that. I know good lawyers that will defend me.
Exactly. So Karine Jean-Pierre, let's get back to that. She comes out and she's talking about, she's been telling us his cheap fakes, deep fakes, and how everybody's, he's a stable person. And she came out and actually said in the press conference just the other day, all these things at this stage in the game, they're just looking at the camera and to the press corps, and they're lying.
Yes.
They're lying because...
Don't believe your lying eyes.
She wouldn't get in a car with Joe Biden if he was driving it.
No way in hell.
Nobody would.
No one would. But when this first happened, and you're seeing, I call it, he goes on the fritz. Like, you can tell that something's not right, and I actually feel bad. I think it's elder abuse what Joe Biden's doing.
It really is sad.
It is sad. There's no way that you would take the keys away from your grandfather if he does this. You would be worried about him living alone. I also think that's why Joe Biden's saying, I want to stay in the White House. If you're Joe Biden, think about it from her perspective. It's the best nursing home in the world. You get to still live your life because you know he's always safe because there's always people around him.
Yep.
You have full-time people that will wipe his ass. You have food delivered. You have the best medical team in the world. You have a helicopter to leave when you want to and a plane. And you don't have to go to Delaware and stare at an old man that is just declining.
Yeah.
Of course you would want to stay in the White House.
Yeah.
And the alternative for the good of the country to say, hey, this guy's clearly not in charge. Like, hey, this is bad. Hey, we need to think about the future of this country. They don't care about this country.
Old friend of mine is Secret Service. He's been in charge of Jimmy Carter forever on the healthcare side of things.
Yeah.
The Secret Service. He's got to make sure that when he's putting his pants on, he doesn't fall over and break his neck. That's been his job for a long, long time. So it's palliative care. I mean,
who did he piss off in our government?
No kidding.
Right? Like, yeah.
No kidding.
That's like a prison sentence in
so
itself.
He's sitting there in Plains, Georgia, watching. Of course, Rosalind's dead. He's watching these old people die.
Yeah.
So these people are getting the ultimate care.
Yes.
In the whole thing. Jill is considerably younger at this stage than Joe is.
She was a babysitter.
She was a babysitter.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole deal?
Yeah.
I mean, Joe railroads the guy that hits and kills his wife and kid and says he was drunk driving. He wasn't. Sends this guy off. And then, boom, he's free and clear to run off with the babysitter.
This is a guy... but
there's a history there that's not good.
So I go back to the Biden family, and the reason why I have no respect for them. This is a guy that's so selfish, but he encouraged his son to have sex with his sister-in-law and then got her addicted to drugs and then still advocated and sanctioned it. This is also a family, and Joe Biden, that saw their son's drug addiction as an opportunity to expand their criminal activity because then they had an alibi when if what hit the fan, they could then say, well, he was an addict then. It's not his fault. They knew he was an addict, and they were still giving him $100,000 checks to go out and do human trafficking, sex trafficking, and bring girls across state lines. They knew the money was flowing out. They knew he was an addict, and they exploited it so they could make money off it because the alibi was, well, he was an addict then. There's no responsible father that you would let your kid be homeless before you kept giving them hundreds of K to go for blow and hookers. Like, if you love your kids, you don't give them money for blow or hookers. I think that's universal. I don't think you have to be Republican or Democrat, right? Like, and because you'd be afraid they're going to OD, right? If you love them. And Joe Biden and Jill Biden were like, dude, this is great. He can do business with everyone we could never talk to because we're sober, right? Like, even his own brother, who did some shady deals, wouldn't do deals with the former mayor of Moscow's wife, who, by the way, has still not been sanctioned in Russia. Okay, Veteran has still not been sanctioned. That's a fact. Who wrote them a check for millions of dollars. He wouldn't do business in Ukraine. He wouldn't do business in Romania. He wouldn't do business with shady people down in Mexico. And they never did business in China until Hunter Biden could do the deal. And the alibi was he was a drug addict when he did it. He's a drug addict. The Biden crime family made more money off their son being a drug addict than any other time when his brother was running the family 30 years prior. Yeah. That's a fact. So if you don't care about your own kid and you don't care about your grandkids, you won't even let the child in Arkansas have your same last name and you've never met them and you don't admit that they're yours, why would you think they'd take care of Joe Biden when he's senile? Yeah. They're not. They're horrible people, period.
And they hate his guts. I'm convinced they hate his guts.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that, the 10% for the big guy, Pedo Peter, the whole thing, I think that was Hunter lashing out, saying, I don't like this guy. So now you have Hunter, who just as of yesterday, Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre, the Cupid doll, she was asked the question about The reports are that Hunter Biden is now going in and meeting with top White House officials alongside his
100%.
father. He's not an elected person. He's not even a bureaucrat.
He's a felon, by the way. So
Right.
anything they're talking about in there that's semi-close to classified, he shouldn't be in the room.
So why? And she says, well, it's the 4th of July weekend. We know the family. This is the dance they do.
Yeah.
The dance. Well, it's 4th of July weekend. As you know, family's going to be in town. Family's going to be in the White House. You're probably going to see other family members. She's dancing around this thing like it's a holiday and the family's coming to hang out. You know, last year they found cocaine in the White House for the 4th of July. And dudes were showing their boobs
And he
on
was,
the...
and he was,
Oh,
on
if
the
you
balcony.
go back and watch
Go
that
watch
video,
the balcony.
Go watch the balcony. Jill's got post-nasal drip.
Yeah.
You go back and watch. She's swallowing hard. Go back and look at this stuff. I mean, everybody's on the blow. And so they sweep that under the rug, do a whole thing. The only thing we ever got out of it was, we'll just tell you it was somebody within the Biden inner circle.
Yeah.
We got a laptop with a dude doing blow out of strippers' buttholes. We know who it is.
Yes.
We can put 2 and 2 together. We're not stupid, but again, don't believe what you see in here. So she comes out and she makes this, well, it's just the family's here. That's not what you were asked, woman. You were asked, is Hunter Biden meeting with White House officials?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
But it's not for the reasons that you may think.
Okay.
I think what they're doing right now is, when the wheels came off Thursday night and staffers of the White House are the first to bail, and they're willing to bail to get their next job, and they're willing to expose things like this White House all-staff call that they just had. It was leaked as the call was going on because everyone's looking for their exit strategy, right? They're looking for their next job. And so I think what happens is, when things get really bad, your circle gets much tighter. So I think Hunter Biden's in the room babysitting, making sure his dad doesn't agree to anything because he's senile that he shouldn't agree to. Look, Hunter Biden, and the reason why I think ultimately Joe Biden may not step down, regardless of the pressure, is because he still needs to be president long enough to pardon his son.
Pardon his son, I agree.
It's that simple. He didn't care about America. He never has. If he did, he wouldn't do deals with Russia and China and Romania and Ukraine to the highest bidder, the people that hate us the most. You wouldn't take money from Vladimir Putin's best friend, who's the mayor of Moscow's wife, for millions of dollars that's still unexplained. They don't have a soul. And so Hunter Biden's got to make sure daddy doesn't agree to something like dropping out, because he needs to get a jail free card. Now, the deal that I think could happen is, I could see Hunter Biden and Joe Biden going to Kamala saying, hey, if we drop out, it's only you, and you're the only one we'll agree to. And you have to guarantee us the pardon for Hunter. I think that's the only way he leaves. But ultimately, until this is all settled, all the legal issues and the 2 court cases, Joe Biden has to stay president to protect his son. And if he's anything I do know he's not senile enough to remember, it's that.
Yeah. And I wouldn't put it past Hunter that if he does go down into that degree, that he doesn't start spilling the beans. They've got to protect Hunter because he knows too much.
Well, and the media would love, if they're going to get rid of Joe Biden, they're not going to put him out in a nice carriage and go down the street waving like he's a good do-gooder. They're going to hammer him into the ground so it doesn't look like they made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And the wheels would come off, the DOJ and everybody else. And so I think this is about protecting the Biden crime family. Yeah. He's got to stay alive. It's weekend at Bernie's, except he's the president, to protect the Biden crime family. It comes back to that at the end.
So back in 2015, I was sitting there on the set with Tommy Lauren. And Tommy asked me, she goes, I'm confused. Are you a Trump person or not? Because I'd said a lot of things. I said, yeah, and I'll tell you why I am. I said, the reason I've decided, because I didn't understand Trump. I was a Ted Cruz guy.
Yeah.
I said, I don't understand.
You and I both.
Yeah. I was like, I don't understand Trump. It doesn't make sense. My mother was like, I can remember, took my mother on a vacation to Vegas. My mother, of all the places she wanted to go to Vegas. And take her out there. We were in the back of a Uber or a cab.
That's the first sign, by the way, you should be on her bank accounts.
I know, right? Exactly.
Like, if she ever asks, like, hey, Mom, I want to be on the bank accounts to watch your money. Why, son? Well, I could take you anywhere in the world and you pick Vegas.
There was such a funny
there's a
story.
sign there.
It's such a funny story because my mother, my father had just passed away. And I said, Mom, I'll take you anywhere in the world you want to go. Just let's get you away for a little while. And she said, I want to go to Vegas. And I said, you sure about that? She goes, oh, I loved it. Last time I was there, Kenny Rogers was singing in a lounge. I was like, Mom, this ain't 1971.
Yeah, this is a different Vegas.
It's a different Vegas.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, no, I'd like to sit down and play blackjack. I said, oh, okay. So I said, who do you want to take with you? And so my mentor, my longtime pastor and his wife, Wade and Ann, she said, I want to take Wade and Ann. I said, okay, so we're taking the preacher to Vegas. Let's go. And so we went out there 4 or 5 days.
Where'd y'all stay?
We stayed at...
I ask because, how do you protect your mom from Vegas in Vegas?
You know where we stayed? We stayed at New York, New York.
Oh, that's a great one.
Which, if you get in there, it's a little bit low-key. I mean, it's a little more family-friendly. They got a roller coaster that runs through the dadgum thing. And so I was like, okay, we'll go out here and we do that. I remember that now. Stayed at New York, New York, across the street from the MGM Grand, and she was over Vegas in about 6 hours.
Yeah.
But we had a good time. And so we're in a cab, and she's like, don't say anything bad about Donald Trump. And I was like... Why? And she goes, because he's the one. He's the guy. I love Trump. And I'm like, I don't get it, Mom. I don't understand what he's saying when he's giving a speech. Like, it doesn't make sense. Where's he coming from? What's the whole deal? I didn't quite, the whole thing. I was like, what is this guy?
Chad.
And I'm like, Ted Cruz is the smartest guy in the room. I don't care what room you're in. If you don't believe it, try it. Get in a room with him and you'll find out.
No, he's smart.
And like, this guy is sharp. The guy had the Constitution memorized by the time he was 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. But and I'm like, Cruz is the guy. So anyway, Tommy asked me that day on her set, she goes, are you for Trump or not? I said, I am, because I see the handwriting on the wall. But I said, here's what won me over, is I see how his kids treat him. I see how his kids like him. And that tells me everything. I don't know Ivanka, but I've been around Eric and Don Jr. plenty. And I said, I see how they treat him. I see how they respect him. I don't understand all the dynamics, but I know they're loyal in there. And I see how the grandkids,
they love him,
who aren't part of the business, I see how they respond to him. And I said, so that won me over, because you can't be a bad person.
And that means people love you.
Yeah, couple that.
Your family. If you're a bad person, your family knows you're a bad person first, before anyone else, in my opinion.
They've suffered because of it.
Yeah.
You got a bad dad.
If you're a bad dad, you're a bad dad.
Yeah, I got a comedian friend of mine who's texting me right now. He doesn't have anything to do with his father. I mean, he's like, I don't talk to that son of a,
Yeah.
And so couple that with what we know now about Hunter Biden in connection with Joe. You talk about the grandson, or the granddaughter, who he doesn't acknowledge, doesn't put a Christmas stocking up in the White House for the photos for the grandchild.
And won't let him have the last name.
At all.
Went to court, spent money. You got to think about how evil you have to be to spend money to deny someone who is half you, half your family, your last name.
Yeah.
That's a psycho.
I mean, I've made jokes for a long time, and it's a sad situation, but I've said, Hunter knocked up a stripper in Washington, D.C. named Dallas that lives in Little Rock. And I said, but yeah, this kid is persona non grata.
Yeah.
They don't exist. That tells you everything.
Yeah.
And then you go back to the documents with the pedo
like
Peter.
Father, like son.
Exactly.
Like father, like son. I mean, there's not that much difference. The only difference is one ran for office and one didn't.
Yeah. But you're right, they used him, and they used his addiction, just like when they found the rental car with the Secret Service business card in there, and it's got cocaine in the car and the whole thing. I believe the whole thing was set up, just so we could say, listen, we're low-key telling you he's a junkie. Maybe we didn't know the laptop was going to come out to that degree, but we can let enough stuff out there because, again, he becomes a scapegoat.
He was an addict. We're proud of him. We love him unconditionally. Yeah. I'm a loving father, just don't love all my grandkids. It's the lie, but that's the reason why I have no doubt that they'll sell out America every chance they get to profit from it. They don't care about American. I don't think they care about people suffering in this country.
No.
They don't care if an illegal immigrant kills you. And this goes back to the election and why I think Trump will win. You look at the border, and what the border issue to me shows is you have a president of the United States of America that says, I want to fundamentally change this country. I need new voters to come in here. And I don't care what the carnage is, who dies, what little girl is raped or murdered, what person or what kids put into sex trafficking. We just saw this week a bunch of kids saved. A lot of them came across the border from what we've been told. Hundreds and hundreds of kids saved in this big operation where they're being held in sex trafficking. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if you get killed by a drunk driver. He doesn't care if your wife is killed. He doesn't care if your kids are killed, because it's about changing fundamentally this country. And if you can bring in 25 million and hit stop on that, okay? He also doesn't care if another terrorist attack happens in this country. I was just in D.C. and New York. My dad turned 70, and I was like, Dad, what do you want to do for your birthday? He didn't say Vegas. He goes, I want to go to New York. And I was like, you've never been to New York. My dad's a law enforcement guy.
Yeah.
He's like, never been. I was like, Dad, that's easy. I go every 3 weeks for Fox. Right. Yes, go with me. Let's do New York. And we went to Ground Zero, and we did the museum again. I've done it before, but it's been several years. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, how does the President of the United States of America know that you have people on the terrorist watch list coming across the southern border? We're not catching all of them. You just had these 4 ISIS-K guys who are connected to the same group that's done these attacks in Russia, who have just been caught planning attacks in America. Media downplayed the you-know-what out of that story. And you know that this is what's happening. And I think they think it's worth it. Like, if we can fundamentally change America, and we're no longer have to worry about people like Trump getting elected or the next Ted Cruz getting elected, we don't have to worry about conservatives ever winning again. If a bunch of people get blown up or killed by a bunch of terrorists in a terrorist attack, so be it. If a bunch of people get murdered and killed or raped by illegal immigrants, so be it. If Americans can't afford housing because there's 20 million plus illegal immigrants they're now competing against, or lose jobs and lose everything and become homeless, who cares, as long as we don't have to deal with the Republicans running this country ever again. This is the great replacement. They're trying to replace America with a different government, a different form of government. And look, illegal immigrants, and this is the part that I think people have missed. Illegal immigrants come from countries that are totally content with socialism and communism. And if they come to America and the party gives them the American dream, which is way better than where they're coming from, and gives them all the government aid and free housing and free school and all of their stuff, their groceries are paid for, and their kids get to go to a dentist, which they've never been able to do before or afford. And they get great health care, and they live, instead of dying at 55, they live to 70 or 80. Go look at the age expectancy in these countries are coming from. You come to America, you're probably going to live an extra 10 to 15 years. That's incredible. Yeah. That's the American dream. And you give that to them, they're going to vote for you forever. It's modern day slavery. It's owning a class of people. And the Democratic Party is saying we're in favor of modern day slavery. We're going to give them the dream. We're going to extend their life by 10, 15 years. And some of these people are going to come in and kill you. Some may have a terrorist attack. Some may take over your livelihood. Some of you may end up being homeless under a bridge. We don't care because we hate America and what it is, and we want to change it so that we're always in power forever. And this is how you change a country in one generation.
And also, God, it's a great point. Scary, frightening point, but it's true. They also come from a culture that doesn't mind handling things with violence.
Correct.
So all these bureaucrats have to do is dry up the government cheese a little bit. And these people, we just saw, a guy just killed two people at Chick-fil-A in Irving, Texas. We've had 3, children raped and murdered in the last 8 months in Houston.
Yes, in Houston, not in the country, just in one city Houston, that we know of.
The Nungaray girl gets lured under a bridge by 2 tied up, stripped naked, raped for 2 hours, and they strangle her, toss her body in a ditch. I'm like, these are crimes that should not happen. They're happening because of federal policy.
Correct.
This is blood on their hands. They're okay with that. And they're also okay with the fact that if violence were to pop off into that deal and people like you and me defend ourselves, guess who goes to prison? You and me.
Yeah.
Not the illegal.
Forever. But they don't.
Right. So they know they've got us by the short hairs in regards to this because they've created a situation where we can't even defend ourselves against people who shouldn't even be here.
Correct.
Who are here coming from a culture of violence.
The 2 biggest F-ups in my generation, and I say F-ups and I mean it when I say that. I'm not going to use the word, but that's what's going in my head, is that, well, let me rephrase that. The 2 biggest F-ups of my parents and my generation are this. My parents' generation screwed up this country when they ran to the suburbs and took the kids out of the public schools and handed over the keys to America's minds to the Democrats, and they were doing it with all good intentions. They wanted their kids to be safe, and they wanted to get a good education. And when the public schools started failing, they didn't fix them, they ran from them.
Yeah.
And that is the number one thing that changed Americans' mindset to where we are now, where people like the Squad and they're getting elected, where people look at the government now as their daddy. It destroyed minority homes. This is a stat that scares the hell out of me. In my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, 74.7% of all African-American children born last year were born to single-parent households. So who's the dad? It is literally the government. Fathers no longer have to be fathers because they know their kids are going to be taken care of. I ain't giving you a dime. I'm not going to spend time with my kids. I'm not going to take care of my kids. There's no shame now running away from a child. There's none. There's zero shame.
It's incentivized.
Right. It's incentivized. So now the government is the father, which means you control the household financially. And those people have to say yes to whatever you tell them to do, which is to vote for them, to continue to be their daddy. So we ran away and we created a vacuum that was filled by the Democratic Party. We ran away from the schools. And now the schools don't teach, they're indoctrinating kids. We allowed it at the college campuses as well. All of these college campuses all the LGBTQIA stuff, all a man can be a woman. They gave up on women's sports, and now women and feminists don't know what to do when men are playing sports in their leagues. Like, we gave up. The biggest mistake we made, my generation made, is that we didn't expect safety and security as a country, which at least our parents did. Like, you didn't get elected if you were not keeping people safe. We've now accepted anarchy and chaos in our streets. Black Lives Matter in the name of social justice. And this goes back to what you're talking about, violence. Mm-hmm. And the people that are coming in have no problem being violent because they live in violence their entire lives. They're immune to the shock of the idea of like not having this. They're coming from countries where there's violence every single day. And they have no issue with it. And so now my generation, I think, is the weakest generation in American history. We don't know how to fight. Mm-hmm. We don't know how to say what we believe in and stand up for it. We apologize for everything. So you have a weak generation with a complacent generation that have created the mess we're in right now. And those are the two biggest screw-ups in American history in my lifetime.
That's bleak, but it's true.
The only way to fix it is to call it out.
Yeah, and we've got to eliminate the 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., who are the ones who are actually pulling the deal. Because, again, these aren't elected people.
Yeah, you want to run a country, don't ever run for office.
Right.
Just go work for a guy that got elected.
Right. I have a lot of people who say, Chad, are you going to run for office again? I said, no.
Did you enjoy running?
No, God, no.
Okay, because every time I get the urge, I go take a nap until it goes away.
Yeah, no, I did that.
I used to want to run. And now I've become so cynical. I'm like, I love doing what I do too much. I also don't want to put my kids through it this young. One day,
it's hard.
One day somebody might piss me off enough that I'll say screw it and I'll go.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be when I have young kids.
I have people who now would like to see me run for a certain thing, but I think there's better options.
You'd be good at it.
Like that. I guess. I don't know. We'll see. You know, I knew that when I ran for that office, there was no money behind it. A lot of people didn't want to take me seriously on that, and rightfully so. I make jokes for a living. So I always tell people when I'm on stage, I say, I was the governor you needed, not the governor, or I was the governor you wanted, not the governor you needed. Because I was always going to tell you the truth and stir the pot, and we were going to have a good time doing it. But we did do some good through all that thing. But people always ask me about running for office. I said, I know that I can do more good not in that position. And all you got to do is look at what the bureaucrats are doing in this country. And the people who have the microphone and have the platform and who can say some things and sway some thinking. But it's like you said, it's bleak. It's an uphill battle. I mean, you're pushing that stone up there and it's insurmountable. The government's gotten so big, it's never going to get any smaller. The best we can hope for is that we can get it limited a little bit. But
I'll leave you on a high note. I actually think that Donald Trump winning this time could be single-handedly the greatest moment in American modern political history, and let me explain why. They learned what they did wrong last time, and they realized that everything that Donald Trump did last time was undone in about 48 hours through executive action under Joe Biden, and they realized who was screwing you in the government and undermining you while you were there. There's two groups. Heritage is one. There's an AAFP that's another. They're putting together the Trump presidency right now. And it's going to be, I think, the biggest firing of Washington bureaucrats you've ever seen in history. And they're filling positions now. So they're not behind the ball. They're doing interviews now. They're talking to people now. They have short lists now. So that when Donald Trump comes in after he wins, they're going to go so deep in the Department of Education, all these other areas that we didn't do, these people that are nonpartisan, that are actually partisans, that we didn't touch before, and they're going to clean house in every government agency. I think that's why this presidency of Donald Trump is such a threat to the Democratic Party and to the Republican establishment, because he's now understands, and the people around him understand, oh, we did it wrong the first time. Now we know what to do the second time.
Yeah.
And I think he'll do it. And I think that's going to be really fun. Get your popcorn ready, because there's going to be a ton of people that get fired day one.
That's going to be interesting to watch.
It's going to be awesome.
That's why when you talk about they accused the right of being the violent ones, hey, look, how many people just in the last days have just jumped on Twitter and said, can't somebody bomb this guy or assassinate this guy? Or, again, Harry Sisson says, why don't you send SEAL Team 6 in?
And just take him out and say it's an official act, which is not what the official act says.
Right.
Like if you want to go into what official acts are in this ruling, go listen. Ted Cruz and I did an entire podcast on what the Constitution actually says on official acts and what it means. And you know how brilliant it is. You mentioned that earlier.
Sure.
If you listen to that show, I learned a ton because he was like in his zone, explaining you can't go out there and just kill somebody. That's not in your official capacity. Yes, every president have killed men. Okay, even Carter have killed people, but it's in the act of national security. It's not in your personal interest to go kill somebody that you don't like. It's different. And it's very clear. There's not a lot of gray area. Like, it's pretty clear. And so this idea that you can just say, oh, take out my political opponent with SEAL Team 6, no, you're going to go to jail for that. And yet the Democrats are like, well, democracy will end if Donald Trump gets elected because he'll be able to kill all of us. We'll have to leave the country. I hope some of you leave, but he's not going to be able to go kill you because you gave a bad commentary Tuesday morning on MSNBC.
Yeah. And they never do leave the country.
No, they never leave.
I'm looking at you, Babs Streisand.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you guys, these celebrities. Ben, one of these days, well, I could never see Senator Cruz coming up here into the house here to the cave.
I will work on it. I will work on it.
That's so funny. They'd have to come in. Somebody told me a while back, and I don't know if this is true or not. I wonder if you could clarify this. Somebody told me a while back. They said at one point, and it may be still true, if it is true at all. They said that Senator Cruz is like the number 3 most protected person in the nation behind the president and vice president. They said because of all the stuff that comes his way.
There's a lot. Like when I first came on, there was a DC detail that was pretty intense because there was active threats.
Yeah, sure.
And that's, I think, public knowledge. So it's not like you could see him out and you knew. That's
but
the part of the job that sucks. No, I mean, there's people that hate him.
Astros games. Yeah. I see him at the Astros games, and there might be a couple of police officers up at the top of the deal.
I will tell you the funny. You'll like this. So when I first started and we were traveling, one of the security guys came. He's like, "Hey, like, do you carry?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Hey, we got this." And I'm like, "With all due respect, dude, I'm going to see the dude probably before you are, and I'm in the line of fire, and you're not. So I'm going to keep carrying my gun. Right. Thank you very much." Now this is like a DC guy, and they were like, kind of looked at me like, "Oh wait, he's not kidding." And I'm like, I carry everywhere. And it's now become a joke because like we're on stage like doing Verdict and I've got like I'm carrying like I'm not going to carry. There's no chance in hell. I'm like, no one cares if I die. They're protecting you. You're not there to protect me. Right. Like that's kind of the joke is like I'm good. But yeah, I mean you think about that stuff. Yes, I think Ted is a guy that he believes in God. I think he believes it's what he's put on earth to do. He doesn't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like he really doesn't. I mean, there was moments he's told me about back in the campaign when there was pretty significant threats. And he was like, I just was like, look, if today's my last day, then God, I hope I did what you wanted me to do.
Yeah. I've always gotten that vibe from him.
That's the mentality. Like he's not fearful.
Yeah. I've always gotten that
But
same
you're probably
vibe.
the same way. You're not fearful. I'm just like, I mean, once you've been shot at like me, I think you just change your mentality. You're like, all right, like I'm now like, let's go. Like if you want to come, I'm ready. I'm a really good shot, and we'll see who wins this battle. But I think he has confidence in his faith. He's like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and God's going to protect me.
Yeah. Dude, thanks for coming on. Hey,
guys, thanks for having me. We'll have to do it again. You got to come on my show.
Absolutely, man. I love to talk. So this is an insightful episode. It really is, and we are going to do it again as long as you'll do it. I can't stress heavily enough to people listening or watching this thing. The Ben Ferguson Show, you're still Sunday nights, right?
Still Sunday nights nationwide. So wherever you got a News Talk station in that city, I'm on. The podcast, Ben Ferguson Podcast, you can download it on your iPhone, wherever you get your podcasts. And then Verdict with Ted Cruz, I do 3 days a week with him as well. So you can download that one. And that's,
you're doing a lot.
It's fun. I love what I'm doing. I feel like I'm making a difference. As long as I'm making a difference, I'll keep doing it. And then if not, I'll just go get to maybe like follow your footsteps one day.
Come on, rock and roll.
Making people laugh is good. Or cooking barbecue, which is something you and I both like to do.
Ben came in the house today, and I said, hey, come have a bite of this dried pork chop. Shy and I every morning, I eat meat for breakfast. So every morning I go to the store, and I get the $5 meat in the day-old section or whatever, and I come back and I grill it. And like that's my breakfast. I eat steak most mornings, but I had pork chops this morning. And so I cooked them a little quick, so they're a little dry. But Ben comes in, grabs a fork, and goes at it.
So you'll laugh. Last thing, the other night I'm doing, was it Good Morning Britain or Piers Morgan? It was somebody from Britain that called, and I answered on speakerphone. And I'm like yelling from across the room, and he was like, "What are you doing, mate?" And I'm like, "Sorry, man." I was like, "I just got a quarter of a steer, and I'm having to get in the deep freeze." Like mind blown. They did not, and they're like a steer, and I'm like, "Yeah, like a fourth of a cow." I was like, my brother-in-law, we'll buy a cow, and then we like 2 or 3 of us will go in on it. And so I was just packing my deep freeze with all the good meat, and they were like, he was like, "You guys are bloody weird in America, man." I'm like,
the way we are, baby.
Or we're just America. This is what you do.
That's the way we are. All right, Ben Ferguson, thanks for joining. Listen, guys, go to watchchad.com. That's where all the fun stuff is. You can find me out on the road doing all the fun things. And you can join the family over at thechadprathershow.com. Check it out. Drop us your email address. We'd love to send our newsletter to you every week. We do it only once on Friday. We're not going to blow you up, I promise. And we've got some inside stuff that we'd like to be able to send you. So check it out. And, I'll tell you, it may seem bleak, but that's okay. God's in control. At the end of the day, there's some pretty smart people out there who really are fighting for our freedom and our liberty, and we're just trying to see what we can do to boost those voices. Ben's one of those guys. And I think that when it's all said and done, you and I were going to be all right. We're going to come out on the right side of history. It might just be ugly along the way. Ben, thanks again.
Thanks
you guys, thanks for coming on and listening, watching. Leave us the rating and the review. Share this with your family and friends, and we'll talk to you next time. We love you. God bless you. Bye.